You can look at me. Would you please introduce yourself briefly?
My full name is long and very formal, William Smith Lawrence, so my friends could just call me Billy. And I'm from Massachusetts. I grew up about 100 miles west of Boston. West of Boston is kind of flat, and then there's a long river comes down from Canada, and my hometown is on that river, and then the mountains begin. So I grew up skiing in the wintertime and playing sports all year round. I went to school and studied in Boston at Boston University and University of Massachusetts. And Boston, of course, is a great town to study in, a great town for many things. In fact, it's kind of unique because in a 3-hour drive in any direction, you've got all kinds of things 12 months a year. Mountains, beautiful beaches, so on and so forth.
How about your careers as a teacher?
As a teacher, I've been teaching for over 30 years. I first started at college. My professors asked to read my class notes, and then they hired me to tutor our students and my classmates. Of course, students being students, there wasn't a lot of tutoring. It was exam preparation. They would come to me the night before an exam. Most students don't know it's much easier and better if you just keep up with the work and review your notes all the time. But that's when I started teaching, really.
And would you tell me about your experience as a IELTS test examiner?
IELTS has changed a lot over the years. It's evolved, very different now. Here in the Philippines, the examiners don't mark papers anymore. I think they're all sent to Australia and India. In the beginning, I think the test was probably better because the students had a chance to ask questions, but that was removed from the test. It took too long to set up, and it was a role play. A lot of the candidates didn't know what a role play was, so they eventually just removed it. An IELTS examiner, there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction from that and preparing students for it, especially in both here and Taiwan. Taiwan is mostly for study. Here, it's mostly for employment. Students, candidates want to take the test and work in other countries. So both was very rewarding. Helping a person change their life. And of course, they're motivated because they want to go earn money in another country and they want to study in another country.
Yes. So you worked as an IELTS test examiner for about more than 20 years?
An examiner, 22 years.
22 years.
Yep.
You teach ESL, IELTS, and SAT. Which one do you prefer to teach? And how about the level of students? The basic level or students in the middle or higher level students?
All the levels have something unique about them. The basic levels, the students tend to make progress faster. The language is basic. And of course, the higher levels, you can have conversation. The lower levels, the beginners, you can train them from the very, very beginning to develop good habits. And, it's a different culture, so we interact with our teachers much differently from the way Asians do with their teachers. So that's important to break them in, interacting with their teachers.
Okay, so these days, what students are you teaching these days? And what are their goals? And how are you helping them achieve their goals?
The students right now they want to prepare for the IELTS exam. And so the hardest part is writing. That's the most difficult skill generally for everybody anyways, but it's so important. Language, the speaking test is probably the easiest once they learn the basics and try to appreciate the importance of explaining everything. In English, we explain everything. We explain our answers. We explain our questions. Why are we asking the question? Because that 100% communication is so important all the time. We explain when we don't know something. We explain why we don't know and then offer a suggestion. We explain everything. Other cultures, many other cultures don't do this. So once students get used to that, they do quite well in the speaking.
So would you please tell me about what you teach to your students these days?
Writing, the basic writing element is the paragraph. If you can write a paragraph, you can write a book, because the topic sentence acts like the introductory paragraph, and then the concluding sentence, if there is one, is a reiteration of that. Everything in the middle is support, just like a book. So that's most important, is to get that paragraph down. And once a student learns to do that in English, then they don't spend so much time worrying about writing. They can just pound out a paragraph, pound out an essay, and not panic so much. In the United States, students probably aren't learning to write the way they used to be taught in school. So when they get to university, they have to learn to write. Even in freshman, every university, every college in America has freshman English, and that's writing. Writing a basic academic essay.
Would you briefly explain some tips for teaching IELTS for each part?
For each part? Okay. The reading part, don't read the reading test. It's about getting your answers as quickly as possible. So there are different types of reading. There's skimming, there's scanning, there's intensive reading, and then there's another strategy called deriving meaning from context. So IELTS goes a little bit further. It's not only about what you know and what you don't know. IELTS wants to know, what do you do when you don't know something? What do you do then? So that's an important part to both the reading and listening, because they're receptive skills. The listening is the same. A lot of people, they get lost. So the test gets progressively more difficult because people say, oh no, it's too fast, no, it's not too fast. People get lost when there's more time in between answers. That's when it becomes more difficult. That would be part 4. Part 1, there's a lot less paraphrasing. Almost everything you see is what you hear. So that makes it easier. Then there's more time between answers. Part 4 is one person. It's more difficult when only one person is speaking. Question answer, when there's 2 people, it's generally question answer, question answer, question answer, so you can predict better. So prediction is the key to everything. In the beginning, students, as they become more familiar with the test, their scores tend to improve. But then once they're fully familiar, then they flatline. And that's the mistakes candidates make. Really, that's the point when you cannot stop learning language strategies and skills. But that's what a lot of candidates don't do. So my advice would be just keep learning language skills and strategies.
Okay, you've been teaching some Korean students going to international schools in the Philippines. How satisfactory is the academic achievement of the students going to international schools?
I think going to international school, studying in the medium of English, just that in itself will help them a lot more than what they would get back home in Korea or whichever country they're coming from. When you're doing something in the foreign language or the second language, whether it's learning to cook or learning a job skill, anything is it's a tremendous help in studying. Of course, if you're studying in English and English is what you want to improve. There's a lot of what we call passive learning. So it's not like sitting down and memorizing a dictionary. We learn a lot, especially reading. We learn a lot that we don't even know when we're learning.
Okay, can a Korean middle school student who cannot English very well come to the Philippines and adapt to the new environment and achieve academic achievement and go to college? Do you think it is possible?
Yeah, I think for much the same reason. All day long, I speak English all day long, all night long. It's easier for me, of course. But there's no reason why a Korean student coming here and studying, why if they wanted to, they didn't hang out with their Korean friends all the time speaking Korean, their English would improve greatly. But I've seen it done both ways. In Taiwan, I had students preparing for IELTS who they made steady progress in Taiwan. Then they went to Australia and their scores went down. Unbelievable. At the same rate that they improved in Taiwan. Why? Who were they living with? They were living with Taiwanese relatives. And they thought they were going to improve their English through osmosis without making any effort. But they were speaking Taiwanese every day, every night, and not putting it on.
Yeah, there is the same. This person living in the States, in LA, cannot speak English at all, even if the one is living there for 10 years because there's a Korean town.
Yeah.
Same as the environment is the same as Korea.
Yep. It's not just the Koreans. It's everyone. It's estimated about 30% of Americans. They're immigrants, but they're with their own. They're speaking their own language, doing their own things.
Okay, I think it's done for today, but let's continue next week.
Okay.
The question should be very specific, I think.